right on time at 6:30. Thank you all for being here. This is a great turnout, and it shows the extreme importance for our supervisor in this district. Our supervisor is very, very important for what we do and what we wish to accomplish here in this district, and we thank each of the candidates sincerely for being here. My name is Dawn Trennert, and I'm the chairperson of the Middle Polk Neighborhood Association. I'd like to thank St. Paul's Lutheran Church for hosting us this evening, and St. Paul's is also our host for our usual third Monday of the month meetings. As a note, next month, on Monday the 19th, we will be having Melissa Griffin Kane here to talk about the ballot initiatives, what the ballot initiatives really mean, what all those words really mean, who put them on the ballot, why they're there, what do they mean, etc. We have had Melissa for probably every year that we have been an organization, and it's a very, very well attended event, and I encourage you all to join us. I'd like to introduce Joe Vasquez, an award-winning newsman and a local neighbor. Joe is from KPIX Channel 5 News. Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's get the show on the road. Let's get this election over with so my friends will talk to each other again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the District 3 Supervisors Debate. Looking forward to a robust presentation tonight. A few ground rules. The candidates have agreed to give introductory remarks that will last 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. After that, they'll answer questions compiled by the Middle Polk Neighborhood Association. They've agreed to keep their answers to the questions to 2 minutes. Now, Chris is on the clock. Where are you at, Chris?
Right here.
Chris is right here. He will be giving you signs, signals, waving multicolored signs in the air. If you go over as well, you'll feel a slight shock from your chair. If you keep going over, the shock treatment becomes more and more violent. Let's just not go there. Please put your cell phones on silent right now. You don't have to turn them off. I don't want to hear it. No. As for the audience, you don't have to be silent, but let's keep it civil. No, Don wants it silent. Please do not applaud, heckle, boo, vex, cajole, or otherwise disturb the candidates, as we have a lot to get to and we want to keep it moving. So with that, why don't we do this? Let's pick the order of the opening remarks from a hat, literally from a hat. So Don, let's do the honors and we'll get it moving.
All right, we're going to mix these up. And I'll ask this gentleman next to me to pick.
You, sir, you've never seen this before? Or?
Now would you pick the second person?
All right, first person.
Thank you.
Too many folds.
Julie Christensen. All thumbs. Christensen. Pang Peskin. Yes. All right, while she hands that to me, I'll just ask you in the opening remarks, candidates, thank you for being here, to, remind us who you are, tell us why you should be the next supervisor, and Madam Supervisor Christensen, please begin.
No, I won't start. There we go. I am Julie Christensen. I am currently your sitting supervisor in District 3 since last January. Thank you all for taking the time to come down this evening. As somebody who's worked as a neighborhood advocate for the last 20 years, you always like any cause that'll get people to come on down and to participate. So I appreciate your concern about this election. I'm looking around at a room full of faces. I think I've met a number of you as I've been going door to door and doing house parties, and thinking of Dawn and her organization, and the hopes and dreams of a lot of us who live in the neighborhoods of District 3 and who have our own hopes and wishes for the district, our own concerns. That's what got me into civic engagement. I became involved because there were problems and opportunities in my neighborhood. And I found if I got up off the couch and found some like-minded people, I could make a difference. And so I see a few of them in the audience today. That made Coit Tower ADA accessible without chopping up the murals. It created the park around it. It repaired the North Beach Pool. It built Helen Wills Park in Russian Hill. It created the North Beach Library. And we'll very soon see a new Joe DiMaggio playground opening up. As a neighborhood advocate, I was able to get the city to do something it had not done prior, which was to do a cost-benefits analysis of the completion of the Central Subway to the waterfront, something not only important to our residents, but also to the 8,400 people a day trying to get to work at Fisherman's Wharf, and all the visitors that clog our buses and our streets in the district. So I know what the power of a neighborhood, of a district can do when people work together to get things done. I gave up a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money to devote myself as an advocate for things that I believed in. And I've been proud to work for the last 9 months as your supervisor. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit during the debates about some of the issues that I know matter a lot to this district. But I've been proud to work hard. I've brought $4 million in extra funding into the district. I've made sure that our nonprofits have been fully funded. We've worked with the MTA to try to get specific projects done to the benefits of the neighborhoods. We've been working with the police on crime. And I think I've demonstrated in the last 9 months that I know how to work within the government at City Hall. I know how to take care of this district. I've got 33 years as an independent businesswoman behind me, 20 years as a neighborhood advocate. I'm proud to be your supervisor, and I would love your support in November.
Right on time. Ms. Peng?
Well, 你好, that's Mandarin, but in Cantonese, most of you encounter people can't be speaking. 你好, so the difference is, I don't know whether you can tell the difference. Anyway, this neighborhood is not strange to me because I lived here actually on Broadway Street, 1236 Broadway, that's between Hyde and Leavenworth, for 5 years. And I used to take my kids back in 1960s to Helen Wills Playground. And Helen Wills Playground then played tennis, and I used to sing with the director. So anyway, and I remember Swanson is next door. I used to shop there for my fresh seafood. So, and then, but this neighborhood has changed somewhat, but not as drastic as other neighborhoods such as Mission. Hopefully this neighborhood will not be as fast changing as the other neighborhoods. Anyway, why am I running? Well, anyway, and most of you think that, well, Wilma Pang is a perennial runner, but that's okay because, you know, I'm an educator, have taught at City College for the last 35 years. Now I'm living in Chinatown about the same time. So I know education is very important. And also as a professor and teacher, I've taught kindergarten through high school and at City College for 35 years. It is important for an educator to be able to understand people, to be able to negotiate. So my nature is to nurture, not to do otherwise. So anyway, I hope that I'm running will bring a different perspective to the Board of Supervisors. And I'm an artist, and I really, really like to see more performing arts and more creative arts in the coming years if I ever get elected as a supervisor.
Thank you. Mr. Pesky?
Thank you, Joe, and thanks to all of you and to Middle Polk neighbors for tonight's debate. And I can't believe you're spending the last day of summer here, but thank you. This is Democracy in Action. For those of you who do not know, I am Aaron Peskin, and I'm running again to represent the people of District 3 on the board because I believe that we need an experienced legislator at City Hall who will represent all of our neighborhoods and, most importantly, provide checks and balances at a time when they're desperately needed and missing from City Hall. I'm running because I think we need an independent supervisor who listens and then speaks up for those voices that increasingly have not been heard in the current political dynamic. And when I say independent, I mean someone who will look at each issue and make decisions on what serves the best interests of the district, not based on who's against it, who's for it, which special interests are against it or for it, or what the mayor wants. And if you're looking for an example of why that's important, you need look no further than 8 Washington, the proposed luxury condos on the waterfront. I think we all know the story, how despite many efforts by the community to make ourselves heard, the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and the mayor just rubber stamped that oversized luxury condo project on our precious waterfront until we, the community, did something that hadn't happened in a generation. We got 33,000 signatures in 29 days and brought that referendum before the people of San Francisco. And it's no surprise that the voters saw what City Hall somehow missed, that raising waterfront height limits to higher than the Embarcadero Freeway to build $5 million luxury condos was not the kind of housing that San Francisco needs or that any of us can afford. A real housing plan for this city will stabilize our existing rental stock by passing real reforms to short-term rentals, protecting existing tenants from gotcha low-fault evictions, maximizing affordable housing on our public sites, and most importantly, requiring developers of luxury housing projects to build a higher percentage of affordable housing on site. But there's much more than waterfront development and housing. Since I left office in 2009, the city's budget has increased by almost 40% to almost $9 billion. The city's workforce is about the same size, and I can tell you this, they haven't gotten 40% pay increases, so where did the other $3.5 billion go? The city is spending almost double on cleaning our streets, now almost $46 million, yet our streets are objectively dirtier. The city is spending $25 million more a year on homelessness, yet the homeless population has increased by over 1,000 people, and in this district, over 27% since llast year. That's staggering. And believe it or not, our actual approval of new housing starts has dropped.
Thank you, Mr. Peskin. We will touch on a lot of these issues. First, Don, we've got standing room only. Do you think we can bring the crowd a little bit more around so that we can folks come on in, make yourselves a little more comfortable. Morgan, it's not a great view from here, but at least it'll be less crowded. And Don is passing another hat around, and that means we're going to talk about the order of the questions. So let's do it. This one. All right, so again, we have a variety of questions put together by the association, but why don't we just cut to the chase? And the first question, what caused San Francisco's housing crisis, and how do we fix it in 2 minutes?
So, I know it's supply and demand. We have not been building enough housing in this city for decades. And it's simple. You look at the graphs. The population's been doing this, and our housing construction has been doing this. That's not the only solution. We need to protect the housing we have. We need to protect the renters we have. A lot of you who don't know me have heard from my opponent's canvassers that I oppose rent control or I want to repeal it. Now, Aaron knows that's not true. I want to say in public to all of you it's not true. Of course I support rent control. Of course I support reasonable restrictions to short-term rentals. But the fact is that protecting the existing housing we have through regulation, though very important, is not sufficient to solve the problem. We need to keep as much of our existing affordable housing affordable as we possibly can, but we also need to build new housing. So you may not know, one of the things I've done since I've been in office is to pass legislation that allows for the addition of new apartments within existing buildings. Now that does two things. It adds apartments in our district. It adds rent-controlled apartments in our district, which is a hard thing to do. It will provide units that are likely to be more accessible, and because they're built within existing buildings, more affordable. But it won't change the character of our neighborhoods. I think that's a great solution for District 3, and we need more. We're building affordable family housing in the district. We have a project on Broadway Street. I found out there was adjacent city-owned land next to it, and we added 50 units of affordable senior housing to that project. We need to make sure that our developers do their fair share to pay into neighborhood amenities and to provide on-site affordable housing. The problem wasn't created in a day. It certainly wasn't fixed during my opponent's tenure, but we can do things, clever things, innovative things to try to make our district part of the solution.
Time. And Mr. Peskin, your name was invoked, and as per the rules of the debate, you had a 1-minute rebuttal, and then we'll go back in order.
Oh, that's a new rule.
Following the rules I was given.
Thank you, Joe. At the last debate that we had, there was a question asked about short-term rentals, namely Prop F on our ballot, which according to Harvey Rose, the city's city's budget analyst, has taken almost 1,900 units of rent-controlled housing off of the market. My response is, it's time for City Hall to step up and regulate the worst excesses of Airbnb.
Yes.
All right, so now we'll go back in order. Ms. Pang,
Oh, you know, I'm
Very good
talking about
question.
rent control, and
what caused the San Francisco housing crisis, and how do we fix it?
it's really, really a chronic problem. I can ever remember that there's always shortage of housing in San Francisco, regardless. It seems like recently, because of the high-tech techie coming into San Francisco, made it worse. But you know, I have blessedly lived in a rent control housing for the last 35 years, and because of that, I'm able to do a lot of community work. Otherwise, I wouldn't probably able to even live in San Francisco. So I don't own any properties like others do. So I'm speaking that I'm strongly advise that we should build more housing. But at the same time, you know, rent control is another area that we should look into, so that the housing for seniors, housing for monolingual community people be able to live here. Because there's a lot of the monolingual Chinese in Chinatown, they really need the housing, but now they've been kicked out because of the, you know, they can't afford it, other people coming into this neighborhood.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peskin.
Thank you, Joe. I think first and foremost, we have to pass Proposition A on this November's ballot, the first bond that we would do for housing in San Francisco since 1996, $310 million as a taxpayer. I'm willing to pay it. I hope 2/3 of the electorate is willing to do so as well. We invited this problem on ourselves in some part by giving $32 million a year in tax breaks to the like of Twitter and other companies that we need not have given away. We did it in some part by opening up our Muni bus stops to Google buses. Some of this was brought upon us by ourselves. Having said that, I served on a board of supervisors that rezoned 22% of the city, authorized the largest single construction project in modern times, over 10,000 units of housing at the Bayview Hunters Point shipyard, and also rezoned the South of Market, Rincon Hill, Octavia Boulevard, and the eastern neighborhoods, which was something that we foresaw in 2007, which is where all of the new housing starts are being built today.
So, all right, look, there are a variety of other questions, but if I may, I want to go one more round on this, because I heard how did this start, but I didn't hear much of an answer. How did this start? I thought I heard the supervisor, I thought I heard you say that supply and demand, as it were, natural forces. Was it just natural forces of the economy that started this?
2 minutes.
Sure.
You know, I think we know that there are a lot of causes to this. I think it's hard for some of us to remember just a couple years ago when jobs was the issue. You know, we were worried about the economy of the city and whether we were going to survive. I mean, Market Street was a shambles. we were in a lot of trouble. And I had a lot of friends that were unemployed at that time. And we did, I think, too good a job in some ways in bringing jobs into the city. Although a lot of the big tech companies that are here now, and I think it's an interesting point, you know that tech is not the biggest cause of influx of people into the city, but rather healthcare is. It's our biotech and our hospitals that are bringing the most new people in. Nobody's standing and protesting at their buses. But we were successful. I think it's partly economic forces. You know, the board in 2000, 2004, they were dealing with the dot-com boom. That board did not save us from the excesses that we experienced in 2000. It was the recession that landed up bringing prices down. But we did not prepare at that time for what was coming. And I think what was coming was visible. And we can rezone things, but we were not, as a matter of fact, some of those rezonings have been rescinded since then by the very people that supported them. But I think that there was a lot of height control, a lot of growth control, as opposed to focused on how we were going to provide housing and provide transportation, how we were going to provide schools and parks and libraries for the eventual growth that did in fact occur. And I don't think that we did enough planning back then for where we are now. Where we are now is not so much a mayor who's been in office for 4 years as it is plans that we made as a city 10, 15 years ago that we're now reaping. And some of the benefit is coming online. We're going through the horrors of construction now without seeing the benefits. We have 5,000 units of housing coming online next year that's already beginning to help a little bit to ease congestion. Not enough, but beginning to.
Time. Okay, thank you. Ms. Payne, what caused this? Why are we in this predicament?
Well, it's a very complex problem, and I remember that housing's always been a problem in San Francisco. Like Supervisor Julie Christensen said, that it may not be the sole cause of the tech coming in, but like hospitals. So it's a very enticing environment, the Bay Area. So I really don't know what is the real cause, but there are a lot of causes. And remember, about 8 years ago, I mentioned about the teachers are not given a fair share of housing in San Francisco. Therefore, many of the teachers are leaving because they can't afford to leave, to live in San Francisco. So we're not getting enough housing for the population, like the people living in Chinatown and the educators.
Mr. Peskin, you heard the supervisor say that over the last decade and more, there was not enough planning done.
So I heard the supervisor say that this happened in 2000, 2004. Convenient, but I would also like to remind Supervisor Christensen and the audience that Supervisor Christensen supported me in 2000 and supported me for my re-election in 2004. I agree with Supervisor Christensen that these issues are complex. I agree with Wilma Pang as well. But we also have exacerbated this. What do I mean? I mean the Academy of Art, or as some people refer to it, the Academy of Real Estate, which the city has allowed to turn some 3,000 units of rent-controlled housing on the Bush Street corridor, on the Pine Street corridor, with impunity. The same thing goes for Airbnb. So we have exacerbated a situation. We've also opened up the welcome mat to offshore and domestic capital that is looking for a place to park in the years after 2007, and we have done that with a big smile on our face without any desire to legislate that. And then I'll go back to the fact that, indeed, whether you like it or not, the development that you're seeing in the south of the market, on Rincon Hill, on Octavia Boulevard, all happened under a very good comprehensive planning regimen that had real, meaningful public input. And let me underscore that. The public was involved in that. This was not the politics of a connected developer, as happened in 8 Washington, who was able to convince 8 members of the Board of Supervisors and the mayor to support it. This was real planning. Planning that was supported by mayors, planning that was supported by supervisors, and ultimately planning that was supported by the public.
Next question, Ms. Payne. What are the opportunities and problems to the city associated with the technology boom And on balance, has it been good or bad for the city?
Well, the good side, because I heard both, especially Supervisor Kristen said that it was a slump period for San Francisco. However, with tech people coming in that give us jobs, and also the economy, one segment of the economy is good. So I would say in general, the economy of San Francisco, in a particular area like the high tech and the maybe some others, but I really see that tourism should be San Francisco's #1 industry. It brings in $7 billion a year, but it seems like nobody's paying attention to it. Just like, well, it's going to survive regardless. But you know, I see that like a central subway may be good for people bringing in jobs, but also it may not help tourism.
Supervisor Christensen, your name was invoked there.
I noticed that. I was going to point that out.
Yeah, I saw your eyebrow raise.
But that's all
I'm
right.
not sure what the point was. All right, so in the order handed to me now from the hat, Mr. Peskin, you are next.
Sorry.
What are the opportunities and problems to the city associated with the new technology boom? Has it been, on balance, good or bad for the city?
So San Francisco has welcomed generations after generations of change and innovation from the days of the gold rush till the current day. And we've managed to bring those people and make them a part of San Francisco, people who are proud of it and people who give back. And I think the new generation of tech folks are getting there. They actually, the more I meet folks, the longer they've lived here, whether it's 3 years or 5 years, they're starting to love San Francisco, they're starting to feel a part of it, and they're starting to want to maintain the fabric of their neighborhoods and give back. Problems? I'll tell you the problem. The problem is a handful of tech billionaires have decided to invest in the business of politics. And let me tell you their names. Ron Conway, Reid Hoffman, the list, Sean Parker, the list goes on. And they are interested in controlling mayors and supervisors. And the best way to deal with that is to make sure that we have an independent legislative branch of government who will hold the executive branch accountable.
Supervisor Christensen.
So I think the thing that distresses me most, first of all, what is technology? I mean, I think a lot of us work with computers these days, but, and also technology's become a euphemism for any new person we think doesn't pay us due respect. I was that person in 1979 when I came to San Francisco, and it was suggested I got acclimated pretty quickly. But the thing that distresses me most about the new economy is the sense that we can somehow sidestep civic responsibility or financial engagement as a path to riches for the few. One of the most interesting statistics I've heard lately was that in the early 1960s, the largest employer in the United States was General Motors. And adjusted for inflation, the average salary they paid their employees was $48 an hour. Today in the United States, the largest employer is Walmart, and they pay their average employee $8.33 an hour. So I look at some of the tech companies who don't pay benefits, who don't guarantee employees a constant salary. I talk to the taxi cab drivers who are paying thousands of dollars a year to calibrate their meters and to pay for insurance. And I want to make sure that the new economy that we support is also supporting our middle class. And Henry Ford said that he had to pay his employees enough so they could afford to buy a car. So I think that is one thing. But I came to San Francisco at a time when the big companies were Bechtel and Bank of America. They supported our symphony and opera. Now we have people that are supporting our hospitals and our schools. It's definitely a different age of philanthropy, but I'm proud to say a lot of these people have come forth on projects I've worked on libraries and parks to help contribute money that we need. And so I'm hoping that we will draw them into the economy and we'll make sure that they're part of the city and that their operations and that what they provide for their employees is good for all of us.
Let's shift gears a little. The Middle Polk Neighborhood Association, one of the great neighborhoods in San Francisco. The members here are very concerned as it's put here in this question, the city streets and sidewalks are among the filthiest in the world. All right. As supervisor, how would you correct this? And now let's see, Mr. Peskin, you're first in this next round.
Thank you, Joe. I would reinstitute something that I pioneered in North Beach and actually was used around the city called the Green Patrol, where if you remember those days, we had little electric carts with folks who just cleaned up the neighborhood. I would reinstitute the Steam Patrol that we use to steam clean our sidewalks. We deserve this 365 days a year, not just when there's a Super Bowl or an election, and that is the way we used to do it, and I think we can do it again. I cannot figure out how our street cleaning budget has doubled to $46 million, and yet our streets are dirtier. And I think the answer is, if we can have a board of supervisors that's willing to ask the tough questions, willing to hold the executive branch accountable, we can get our streets clean again. We did that from 2000 to 2008. I'm sure we can do it again.
Madam Supervisor?
Good news, it's already happening. We've got projects underway in the city, in the district, all over. Some of you, I hope, have noticed some improvements. We've had public works out cleaning by hand. We've had mechanical street sweeping going on. We've funded some of our nonprofits in some of our heavier commercial areas like Chinatown to do more hand cleaning and to do merchant outreach. I totally agree that we do need to keep our streets cleaner. The 4 years of drought has not helped. I think we have a lot of trash that's probably been on the street for 4 years. So we're suffering a little more heavily now than we might have. My office has been working here on Polk Street. We had trouble in Fern Alley with the scavengers that are going through the garbage. And we actually worked with the city garage to get all that garbage collection brought inside of the building so that those bins aren't there anymore. So in a general sense, you know, there are people here in the audience that have opposed mechanical street sweeping because people didn't want to move their cars. And I understand that's an issue, but we're letting the streets now decide street by street whether they want to join that program or not. So hopefully you're seeing some improvement, and I trust you will continue to see that improvement over the coming months as we try to get to a good baseline in the district.
Ms. Pang?
Well, speaking of dirty streets, I think Chinatown really tops the rating. You know, especially on Stockton Street, you know, there are carts and paper boxes all over the sidewalk. And I did talk to some of the police, and they said, why can't we, you know, as a resident, do something? It's pretty hard to say, well, because the congestion on Stockton Street is really, really bad. The flip side of the story is that, oh, Chinatown is so bad, blah, 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 you know, and nobody should visit Chinatown. But look, the engine of Chinatown's economy really comes from the produce market. You know, people from all over the city, especially the Asian population, they shop. And so all this fresh produce, what you gonna do with the, you know, scraps? So that is a big problem. I know that other areas may be dirty, but you know, we need to probably educate the community, you know, because I live in Chinatown, that it's important to keep the street clean.
Next question has to do with the homeless situation, a very difficult issue that many in this audience have dealt with directly and tried to make a difference. The specific question by this association has to do with mental health issues, a significant contributor to the plight of the homeless. How would you address this specific question about mental health if you were a supervisor? And Ms. Pang, you get the first crack at that.
Okay, I know in the Asian community, mental health is not really known to other world, but I really feel a self-fulfillment because in Chinatown, 5 years ago, I see seniors who are mentally not capable or dementia that used to sit in Portsmouth Square, and there are all kinds of characters right in Portsmouth Square. I organized them in a musicians, play some music, and first they say, we don't do that because it's culturally not inducive, because it's not good. So I said, no, come out and play. And end up that you see musicians all along Grand Avenue, it's really helping them. And they're singing, they like to sing, they like to play music, because they express themselves. I feel that it mentally really helps them a lot, just that because of seniors, some of them are homeless, some of them are mentally, not capable. But nevertheless, I feel like I've done something, worthwhile in life because I'm a musician, and I see that, music really helped to help themselves.
Mr. Peskin, mental health issues, wow, how do we address this? What hasn't been done yet, or do we revisit something we've done in the past?
So as the son of two mental health professionals, both of whom are here, thanks for being here, Harvey and Sipa. My mother ran the East Oakland Youth and Family Center, and my father was a psychology professor at San Francisco State for some 4 decades. I think the answer is our society needs to invest in mental health and prevention and education at the front end. And I've actually been saddened to see the number of mental health beds that have been cut at San Francisco General, that have been cut at the Tom Waddell Health Clinic and health clinics throughout the city. When I was on the board, I was delighted to be able to get Health Center number 4, the Chinatown North Beach Health Center above the Broadway Tunnel, its first social worker that it had in those days. And I think the answer is that's where we should invest rather than, and this may be a controversial statement, than investing in a huge, much more costly increase in the number of San Francisco police.
Madam Supervisor.
So I think, first of all, it's important to understand where we are. So a mention was made of the fact that we're spending a lot more money, and because of federal and state cuts, the city has been having to backfill enormous amounts of money, especially for social services in the city. So that's part of the answer. Secondly, there's been a migration. The number of homeless people on our streets has stayed relatively stable for the past few years. What's happened is where they are has shifted. We're building in Mission Bay, in the Bayview, at the Trans Bay Tunnel, even the Doyle Drive replacement, and hundreds, we've counted them, hundreds of people have moved from those locations into our neighborhoods. And we are up 27% in this neighborhood. So it's not necessarily that there are more homeless people in the city, it's just there are 800 fewer in the Bayview and 300 more in our district. So the problem also is that we've dealt with a lot of the cases that we can actually respond to relatively easy. We've gotten hundreds of homeless vets off the street. We've gotten homeless families off the street. We've rehabilitated a lot of people who can go to work. And what we have now are the cases that are really difficult to deal with. So, we're having conversation about a replacement jail in the city, which is a whole nother issue. I don't want to have that conversation without a companion discussion on how we provide long-term mental health services for those people that need that kind of help. Right now, today, we're working on this issue in a number of ways. I've increased Department of Public Health passes in the district, so we've got people looking out for these folks. We're trying to improve reporting. The Navigation Center has been amazingly successful. 60 people housed and 36 people sent home just in the last 5 months. We need to build more of those. But I believe the problem is the labyrinth that our healthcare system has become with regards to the homeless. How we intake those people, how we process them, and how we plan long-term housing needs a big overhaul to be more efficient and more effective.
Thank you. Tough question in 2 minutes, and I appreciate you narrowing in. The independent merchants of Polk Street, the heart and soul of this neighborhood. As supervisor, what would you do to keep this an interesting, vibrant, independent, diverse commercial corridor? And let's begin with Mr. Peskin.
Thank you, Joe. So those of you who are new might not remember that 15 years ago, the Board of Supervisors that I served on at the behest of small neighborhood-based merchants passed the first in America municipal ban on chain stores. And that has been a boon to small businesses. There have been efforts to change that, to allow certain chain stores to get in, including but not limited to Target down the street. It was legislation that needed to be amended in order to help pet stores around the district and around the city, which were getting squeezed out. But ultimately, I think it comes down to making sure that we have a system that rewards commercial landlords who take care of their long-term legacy businesses. And there's actually a way to do that. It is on this November's ballot. It is Proposition J. It is the legacy business measure sponsored by Supervisor Campos, and it offers actually a property tax incentive to property owners who are willing to extend for a period of 10 years their leases at reasonable rates to their long-term commercial tenants. I support that legislation and hope you will too.
Supervisor Christensen.
So Target didn't come to Polk Street. That was done with a series of phone calls. We just called Target and explained to them how their brand was going to suffer if they went to battle with this district, and they agreed not to come here. Now we're trying to get housing at that site instead. The balance between protecting neighborhoods and economic viability is a very delicate one. We're struggling with that in North Beach right now. A lot of restrictions were put in place that limited what could go on in the commercial districts in North Beach. And I don't disagree with all of those restrictions, but by leaving them in place for so long, we began strangling some of the businesses in our district. We have 24 empty storefronts. We had Rossi Market, a major location at Vallejo and Broadway, stay vacant for 11 years. It's going to open up as a branch to Mama's Restaurant. For all of you who want shorter lines, that's coming. We had the Pagoda Theater sit empty for 20 years. And so I think restrictions are a delicate matter. And I'm very concerned for Polk Street about mitigations for the construction that's coming. I think the sewer replacement project and the Van Ness BRT is something that we're all very concerned about. My office has already been meeting with merchants and with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development on how to mitigate and control that as much as possible so that we can keep Polk healthy and alive during that time. I think incentives, all kinds of incentives for business are necessary, and I believe in CBDs. I've been very excited to see the Lower Polk CBD take root. We're really hoping for one at the upper end because these have proven so helpful in other parts of the district, so we've been very supportive of those efforts as well.
All right, so Mr. Peskin, your name was not invoked during that, but
Carefully not invoked.
But sir, that was a shot across the bow if I've ever seen one.
I didn't say who made the legislation.
How would you like to address that? Specifically, it's something a lot of folks in these neighborhoods are talking about. There's a lot of places sitting there and they could be being used.
Thank you, Joe, for that opportunity. I was going to raise it in my next question. So I believe that neighborhoods should have a modicum of control over their destiny. I believe that when the people of District 3 and the merchants of District 3 didn't want to be overtaken by chain stores, that it was the right thing to do to pass legislation to protect those businesses from chain stores. I believe that when the people of North Beach were concerned that the number of bars and restaurants had displaced virtually every small neighborhood serving business, the stationery store, the shoe repair store, that it was time to actually achieve a balance through this thing we call zoning by saying well, enough was enough. And indeed, there are people who are saying that same thing on certain parts of Polk Street right now. Indeed, it was my successor, Supervisor Chu, who created an alcohol restricted use district on Polk Street. You've got to listen to what folks are experiencing, and then you have to decide what the right thing to do is. And I'm rather taken aback that Supervisor Christensen would like to repeal many of these measures that were the result of a lot of community input, hard work, and ultimately passage by a majority of the Board of Supervisors, signed into law by the mayor.
Do I get to rebut
Yes,
that?
you get to rebut that. Sorry, Ms. Pang, please stand by. A name was invoked.
So I have a very short answer, which is I agree with Mr. Peskin that people should have some determination over what happens in their neighborhoods. And that's true when restrictions have been imposed upon those neighborhoods that have either passed their time or that people don't want. And I am certainly, I absolutely appreciate the benefit of control, and I do appreciate some of the things that the restrictions accomplished. I just think that when you put something in place and you do not revisit it over time, as conditions change and it begins having unintended consequences, that's a big downside. And so right now we have people in my district that feel that they are not being heard, that they are not having control because of restrictions that have been forced on them. And so I think it is a matter of delicate balance, and it is a matter of coming back from time to time and doing the adjustments that make our living streets a living project and that make them work over time as conditions change.
Ms. Pang?
Well, before I came here, I walked around the neighborhood. I remember distinctly in the 1960s when I lived on Broadway, there's a Swan seafood place I used to shop. And I see some of the shops are still around. I feel that this is something nostalgic, and this neighborhood has not changed as much as other neighborhoods, and I like to see it keeping that way, the characteristics, I have not seen buildings shut up like, every 10 minutes, so I really think that I like to see the neighborhood like this, and because it's also in the visitors' route, so I'd like to see more arts in this neighborhood.
Our next question, what is your position regarding San Francisco as a sanctuary city? And the supervisor gets that first.
This is me. So I got asked that question on the 3rd of July with a Channel 5 camera stuffed in my face, actually. I think a lot of the recent discussion, which is brought about by dear Katie Steinle's death, has been misplaced, because I do not think the failure in this particular instance was the sanctuary city policy. I think in many ways this was a homeless issue and a car break-in issue. The idea that Mr. Lopez Sanchez was released on our streets, no family, nobody to vouch for him, no income, a probable schizophrenic with 5 felony convictions, really raises the question of, what are we thinking? That we brought this person here only to let him go. And the fact that a federal land agent had a loaded firearm in his vehicle, and that we've had 2 more thefts of loaded firearms from the vehicles of other police officers in the region shortly following that. And the fact that auto burglaries are now the crime du jour for young gang members in the city. So those are the things that I'm really interested in discussing. In terms of our immigrants, I think, way back in Dianne Feinstein's day, there was a desire to protect people who had come to the city, fleeing distress in other places. And I think there's a lot of political will in the city for continuing. What I think failed was our sheriff and his policies. And I think that, that we need to deal with the more specific issues in this case in addition to the philosophical ones.
Ms. Pang?
Well, sanctuary, really, I see that a lot of times we knee-jerk reaction to a situation. There is really something like there's a lot of Asians and also Latinos coming to the city. It is a problem, but I think for politicians to really sort it out is very important. I support the sanctuary, but at the same time, it's very hard to determine what is the real issue, and also, just because one case that we knee-jerk reaction, they say, well, we should do something. It is San Francisco is really international, and we do have a lot of immigrants and also illegal immigrants. So how are we going to solve that? I think we should discuss this in a better way.
Mr. Peskin?
As the supervisor mentioned, this has a pretty interesting history. It comes from the period of time when none other than our Central Intelligence Agency was aiding and abetting death squads in Central America, which led to flight of people who were being persecuted primarily for political beliefs, who ended up on the west coast of the United States and throughout the United States, and that led to San Francisco and many other cities establishing a law that we would not turn those individuals over to the INS, as it was called in those days, to be deported and tortured and killed in Central American countries. Having said that, I think that if I were on the Board of Supervisors, I would be commissioning a blue ribbon committee of people in law enforcement and in immigration who understand the complexities about this issue from legal standpoints and from academic standpoints to really come up with the best practices and recommendations to see if indeed the sanctuary city policies of the city need to be revisited and tweaked. And I think that would be the role I would play on the Board of Supervisors.
Next question. What do you see as lacking, if anything, in San Francisco's mass transit system? If anything. And, if anything. And what would you do about it as supervisor? And let's begin with Ms. Payne.
Well, it's really a system that it's hard to say, because I think, like, I do know that the Central Subway, with a huge budget of, 1.6 billion, escalated from, at first, something, I think 6 million. Now, with that money, I think we can improve the system a lot better by looking at other solutions. I'm not against the Central Subway, but that's a huge amount of money, and I think we should really have something, a budget that is can be used a lot more wisely than a Central Subway.
Mr. Peskin?
So over time, I don't know if you remember Proposition A of 2007, that was a measure in the old days. For every 10 cents you put in a parking meter, 4 cents went to the general fund, 4 cents went to Muni, and 2 cents went to aging and adult services. I did something that nobody wanted to do, and I took that 4 cents that went to the general fund and moved it to the MTA by having all of you consider Proposition A, which also streamlined the bureaucracy in the MTA and Muni. Unfortunately, our mayor at that time saw fit to take that $32 million a year and give it away as work orders to DPW for a number of things, street repaving, the police department, a whole number of things. And I want to actually compliment Supervisor Wiener, who last year put a measure on the ballot that the people of San Francisco voted for to return that income stream of some $30+ million a year to where it belongs at the MTA. And again, that goes back to the fundamental issue of having a board of supervisors that is independent, that is willing to stand up for the folks in the town, willing to take on the mayor. And I understand the mayor's imperative. The mayor's imperative was to have enough money for the general fund to pay for all of those other things. Nobody ever likes to see the income stream to the general fund go down, but it's about priorities, and I stood up and did that, and I will continue to fight for Muni if I'm elected again. Thank you.
Ms. Christensen? Your name wasn't invoked, but it's your time anyway.
That was a different mayor in a different time. So for this group, I think we hope the BRT works. In our district, we have the cable cars, we have the streetcars on the Embarcadero, we're about to have the first bus rapid transit in the city, and we're going to have the first subway. I think we need all those things because we are the densest neighborhoods in the city. Our topography is crazy, and on top of the tens of thousands of people who live in the district, we welcome shoppers and office workers and tourists by the millions every year. For me, the big thing is the Central Subway. As a private citizen, I advocated with some friends and got the Transportation Authority to do a study on what would happen if we extended the subway. 2 top lines. Ridership on that line would, with just 2 stops, North Beach and Fisherman's Wharf, would go from 74,000 people to 115,000 people a day. That's 40,000 people not on the 30 Stockton, not driving through our streets and back. We need to get the E-line extended for the people on the east side. There are people living there that have practically no transportation at all. So I'm pushing to try to get the start time for the E-line's daily runs extended. Along with Supervisor Wiener and our current mayor, we're buying new and bigger buses and more of them, and buses that are going to require, they estimate, 1/3 less maintenance so that they're actually on the street more.
Very good. We'll move on to another question. Wait, help me out. Ms. Peng, did you? No, it's your turn. I'm sorry. Is it not? No. Keep me straight, folks. You already answered. Let's talk about the Mission Rock development in the Giants old parking lot. It has 40% of the housing designated as workforce housing. As supervisor, would you support this for District 3 and Middle Polk? And we begin with Mr. Peskin.
Would I support a 240-foot development for Middle Polk? No. But would I support requiring developers to build 40% affordable housing in new large developments? Absolutely. And I think that Proposition D, which is the Mission Rock development, is something that we should all take a little bit of solace from, because if you recall, after the 8 Washington matter, we went back to the ballot, the people went back to the ballot with Proposition B, which said that only the people could raise height limits on port-owned property. That's all of our property. And that passed last November. And what did that turn out to be? The Affordable Housing Act of 2014. Along came Forest City Development, who wanted to raise height limits from 40 to 90 feet at Pier 70, and the local neighbors supported it. And in exchange, Forest City said they would build 30% on-site affordable housing. Then came Proposition D, where the Giants said they would build 40% on-site affordable housing. What's that tell me? That tells me that City Hall has absolutely failed to raise the current requirement at 12% affordable housing. These developers are making a fortune, and they're not giving enough back. That's what this tells me.
Supervisor Christensen, he's calling you City Hall.
Was he? You're trying to stir us up. So first of all, I don't know if prohibiting the construction of housing in one place actually gets to claim credit for creating it somewhere else. The 5M project that just got approved inside the city isn't on the waterfront, isn't affected by this, and yet is providing a remarkable amount of affordable housing, including some completely affordable units. 8%. You can like or not like the project. What I'm saying is it has an affordable component, and it's not on the waterfront. My old studio was near the Pier 70 project, and I participated in some of those discussions long ago, long before the 8 Washington vote. And we were lucky to have Forest City, which I think is not an evil developer, but somebody who showed interest in the early parts of that project in working constructively with the neighborhood. But more to the point, just had a long chat with one of my staff today about increasing the responsibilities that developers have. We're working on increasing the amounts that developers pay into transportation, for example. You know, we're looking at the projects that are happening on Polk Street and making sure that we squeeze as much out of those projects as possible, which includes below market rate housing. So I absolutely agree that we need to get our private sector to do more, and I can assure you that we're working on ways to do that at City Hall right now.
Ms. Pang.
Well, my immediate reaction is that Middle Polk, the densest area of Middle Polk, Chinatown, and North Beach, you know, I don't think we should build housing here. Other areas like Mission, you know, it's already there, and also there's a reservoir on top of City College. Why not use that? And I think, you know, I'd really like to see, as a private citizen, to leave this area alone.
Very good. We move on to the next question. We actually have 2 more left, so we're doing well. You guys are staying within the time limits. No shock therapy yet, Chris, but do it if you have to. All right, let's move on. Next question. Do you believe the mayor should appoint replacements for vacated directly elected positions, or do you favor a special wait till you're in debate. Or do you favor a special election to fill vacated positions? And Supervisor Christensen, you were first.
Okay. What is it they say? No good deed goes unpunished. So the old question was the cost and the disruption of a special election. I mean, we're going to be lucky this year if 1/3 of the people in this district vote in this hotly contested debate. You guys may be half of the entire electorate right here. So it's already tough, even in fairly big elections, to get people to turn out. It was dear Jake McGoldrick. He actually came up and apologized to me at an event a couple months ago. He claimed credit for having been the one back in the Willie Brown days who decided that an appointed official needed to stand for a confirming election in the next general election after their appointment. I hate that man. But, you know, I think, I don't think that special elections necessarily get enough of the voters out to be representative. And if you're talking about, I mean, I suppose if somebody dropped dead in the first week of their term and had 4 years left to go, it might be difficult. But the law that's in place now that says an appointed supervisor has to stand for election in the next general election means that no one has to suffer through, you know, more than 9 or 10 months of any person. Hopefully, I've proven that that system works at least reasonably well enough to get us through the last year, so I would oppose that.
Ms. Pang, should the mayor appoint replacements?
Well, I think the mayor, well, he has the power to appoint officials, but at the same time, the special election may be a little fairer to the general population to elect somebody, you know, because of population. But I'm not against or for.
Very good. Mr. Peskin?
Thank you, Joe. I was one of the supervisors who, with Supervisor McGoldrick, put that charter amendment on the ballot that the people of San Francisco voted for. If you'll recall, in the old days, when Willie Brown had more than a majority of the board, much of which he had been able magically to appoint Jose Medina, who got appointed to run Caltrans for 13 ignominious months, ended up in appointments. At any rate, I think that the current system where the appointee has to run at the next election works well enough. I think if you want true democracy, albeit with lower voter turnout, we would do what we do when there's a vacancy in Congress, which is a special election. But I think the current system is working just fine. All of you know that incumbency is 9/10 of everything, but I believe that the voters of District 3 are smart. I believe that they're very educated. I believe that they're educating themselves, and ultimately they will make the right decision come November 3rd.
And this is the final question by the association, and then we'll have some closing remarks and some time. The candidates have agreed to hang around afterwards and talk with you directly. Last question. And Ms. Pang, this is for you first. In light of the Citizens United decision, unlimited funds to PACs, what campaign finance or ethics reforms would you support or propose locally?
You mean public financing? Yeah.
You name it. Campaign finance reform.
Well, I don't support public financing because I had terrible experience with that. So that I'll pass on that question.
Very good. Mr. Peskin?
Well, as the author of the legislation that banned corporate contributions in San Francisco, I would love to be able to ban PAC money and corporate contributions to independent expenditure committees. Unfortunately, because of Citizens United, that is now the law of the land, and that is the tidal wave of money that is about to end up in your mailbox, on your computer, and on your television set. And I know that you are all smart enough to figure out where it's coming from and which billionaire titans are paying for it and make the right decision. But by golly, if I could ban corporate special interest, unlimited contributions to independent expenditures, it would be the first thing I would do from coast to coast to bring democracy back to the people of this country.
Supervisor Christensen, before the applause.
And I agree. I mean, I am very concerned as a first-time candidate about independent expenditures on behalf of any of the candidates here. And I guess this is an opportunity for me to say, I guess this will require a rebuttal, but you know, when Mr. Peskin ran in 2000, and he's right, I supported him, his mission was, we're gonna take down Willie Brown and I'm gonna make the city affordable. And is it, how many years later? 15, 16? Now it's 15 years. Now it's, you know, we're gonna take down Ed Lee and we're gonna make the city affordable. And part of the process of that has been to paint me with things that we're all concerned about. You know, as though I don't care about affordability, as though I want, you know, Ron Conway to tell me what to do. I did meet Ron Conway, I want to say that. We did say hello to one another once. But that's not me. I mean, my realm is my district and the people in my district, and that's what I care about. And the mayor and I don't always agree on everything. We've had a few conversations, but mostly it's been about me strong-arming him to support things that I want, like the extension to the subway, like senior housing at 88 Broadway. And fortunately, I've been successful in doing that. I agree with Mr. Peskin that I am worried about expenditure committees, and I am saddened that we're not in a position to do much about that now. All I've been able to do is to try to the best of my ability to put the word out there that I want this election to be as fair as possible. Now, unfortunately, what that's meant is that I've had to fight against a wall of untruth. I've tried very hard in this campaign not to say anything untrue and not to say a different thing to one group and then another. I've tried to give the same answer to everybody who asks me a question, no matter who's asking me. And that can be a difficult thing to do without money.
Mr. Peskin, Willie Brown is still alive and thriving. The city is not more affordable, and there are untruths, and so we're going to give it 2 minutes.
Thank you, Joe. And to add to one more truth, which is when I ran for re-election in 2004, Gavin Newsom was the mayor, and I enjoyed Supervisor Christensen's support in that election as well. And then let me just correct the record, because when we're talking about truth, let's talk about truth. And you can go find this at sfgov.org/ethics, which is if Supervisor Christensen has only met Ron Conway one time, it was at the fundraiser that he held at her house, wherein she raised over $25,000 at one meeting.
Wait. Ron Conway never held a fundraiser at my house.
I didn't say your house, I said his house.
He didn't have a fundraiser at his house for my campaign.
I'm telling you what the campaign disclosures, this has been written about in the Examiner.
No, okay.
Did Ron Conway?
Ron Conway attended an event at IDO with Tim Brown, and he made a $500 contribution. I think his wife did too. And I think he called up Sean Parker and Melissa Meyer.
And his 2 children contributed at that same event, and a total of $25,000 was raised at that event. And
yes, but not by
was
Ron Conway.
Okay.
Yeah, really. And so does that mean that Ron Conway is going to, you know, I mean, this is the interesting thing about $500 or even $2,500. With the $500 per person limit, it's pretty hard for somebody to buy an election. And really? So you guys honestly believe that if I get $2,500 from somebody that I'm gonna like throw myself at some, you really believe that?
Hold on, let's rein it back in. So, Mr. Peskin, let's have some order, ladies and gentlemen, and keep this going because, hey, let's clear the air. But Mr. Peskin, the direct questions were about Willie Brown and
So, Joe, I just want to say this has been the most candid and best exchange that we've had as we are conducting ourselves before the electorate for the next 42 days. But it's not just about $500. It's about the fact, and this is also reported in the San Francisco Examiner, that Ron Conway paid for the independent expenditures poll in the amount of $28,650. So, relative to the Willie Brown question, Joe, when Willie Brown and I agreed, we got stuff done. When Willie Brown needed a check and balance, the board that I served on provided that check and balance against excesses that we did not need, whether it was nepotism, whether it was an army of special assistants that we did not need at City Hall, whether it was misspending money on contracts for friends. That's precisely what the legislative branch of government, whether it's the Congress or the State Assembly or your Board of Supervisors, is supposed to do. And the only way that works is if those individuals are independent and accountable directly to you, the electorate.
There are 3 campaigns sitting on the dais today. The question about untruths was raised. Does anybody want to pledge that there will be no more untruths?
I'll pledge that. I have not, to my knowledge, made a statement in the last 9 months of campaigning that I believe to be untrue, to the best of my knowledge. Really? So the canvassers that are going around telling people that I oppose rent control, the canvassers that are saying that I'm going to raise the height limit all over the district, the canvassers that have people slamming doors in my face because I've been described by paid canvassers who don't even live in San Francisco as the devil herself. That's been tough to take. That's been hard to take.
Mr. Peskin, my question was, do you want to pledge that you will do a better job at making sure untruths do not pervade the candidates?
So Joe, when we go down to the Department of Elections, there's actually, before you put your name on the ballot, a form that you can choose to sign with your name relative to campaign conduct. Joe Butler, who ran for supervisor, John Bardis, who was a supervisor, remembers that form, wherein you promise that you will conduct yourself honestly and transparently. I affix my name to that form, and I believe I've conducted myself in that way. Relative to canvassers, which is different than a candidate, I have plenty of stories to share about what canvassers for either the independent expenditure supporting Supervisor Christensen or volunteers. I don't speak for those people. Running for office is tough. It is emotional, but let me just say, no untruths are emanating from myself, and when I hear them, unlike Donald Trump, I say untrue.
Unlike Donald Trump, if either of you saw a canvasser or anybody representing you, would you be willing to shut it down if it's not true?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I attend my candidate trainings. My volunteer coordinator is standing up there in the back, and I've been to every single one of those Saturday after Saturday. And Lee Hepner, we talk about policy and what we support and what the campaign is about. We do not train our canvassers to talk about height limits, albeit there are truths there too, relative to who supported 8 Washington and who opposed 8 Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll ask Don Trenner to stand up. We're going to pass a hat around. Please put in any question you think will keep this going, because I really like this part of the debate. But seriously, we need to wrap it up. And
Joe, I thought you were going to ask for
And
money.
why don't we go, is it okay if we go for 5 minutes for closing remarks since we have a little extra time?
Yeah, does that include rebuttal?
5 minutes, yeah? Okay, we'll do 5 minute closing remarks.
It's your shot.
Stephanie, would you like to take they're
This is the first in the last order. Hank goes first. Christensen. Peskin will have the last word. Ready, Chris? All right, 5 minutes, and we'll ask the candidates to leave us with a couple of thoughts about why you should be elected supervisor. What will be different? What will be better? And Ms. Penn, you may begin.
Me? Well, I've been an educator and a professional singer, opera singer for almost all my life. So I look at things differently. What I like to see is really more arts. Remember in North Beach and even Polk around in the 50s, we were known for beatnik. And that's what made San Francisco really famous. And also Summer of Love, okay? So what I like to see is, why can't San Francisco maybe the only city that has beauty, and the arts is really important in San Francisco. I don't see anybody developing the arts or for the arts, especially, neighborhood arts. And I like to see that, and as a performer, I like to see more street musicians and artists, that really make the spirit of San Francisco. And I know there's a lot of nice flying around, but being an artist, I don't see that as, it's important to really, let's get together and really spend time to do projects, especially music, because music really unites people. It doesn't divide people. So I like to see the city more artistically and creatively as a city.
For the record, I saw no actual knives. There were no. I did not see it. Supervisor, your closing remarks.
There you go. So I'm sure there's going to be plenty of rebuttal to this. You remember the old song about the lady who swallowed the spider to catch the fly? My concern is if we send Aaron in to take care of the mayor, who's going to take care of Aaron? I was Aaron's supporter for 8 years. We worked very well together. We got some amazing things done. But what happened to me and where I stopped being a supporter was when he began flip-flopping on issues that were very, very dear to my heart, things I cared about. So the Aaron who'd supported the North Beach Library comes out of office and opposes it. The Aaron who signed off on the Central Subway 7 times as supervisor comes out and calls it a boondoggle and a mistake and offers to kill it in a way that would have left the city holding the bag for millions of dollars. He threatened to sue if we tried to acquire the Pagoda Theater. Now he's a candidate, and I think he's cautiously in support of it again. I just don't know where we stand. My understanding is that he offered to help the Middle Polk Association sue to stop the bicycle plan on Polk Street, but he told the Bicycle Coalition that he supported it. I sat next to him in a debate the other day where he says that he supported the Mission Moratorium, but I've got people who attended a Nob Hill meeting where he said he was opposed to it. And I'm sure that there's some delicate explanations for all of these things. But the one thing I can say is I have worked consistently, constantly, and honestly on projects that I believe are good for our district and for our neighborhoods. And I have given the same answer to anybody who asks me a question, regardless of what side they're on. I just had that today with the comfort women. I've got my Chinese constituents on one hand and a lot of Japanese people on the other. And I gave them both the same answer. Neither one of them were completely happy with it. But everybody, all of us feel, I think, the same pain. We feel the housing crisis and housing insecurity as a problem in the district. We want our streets cleaner. We want the homeless dealt with. We want our transportation to be better. What I am is a planner. As a private citizen, as a consultant, my job was to take very complex problems, come up with a solution, gather support for those solutions, and then implement them. And then I was accustomed to a very severe set of metrics as to whether we'd achieve those goals or not. I think what I excel at is consensus, and is at problem solving, and at planning. And I have succeeded even as a private citizen. Now, when Aaron became supervisor, he'd saved the Colombo building and he'd stopped Rite Aid from going into the Pagoda Theater. I've got a library, 2 parks, a historic resource, and a pool to my credit as I enter this office. I've got good working relationships with the departments. I've got department heads and employees all over the city looking for ways to help our district because they know that I've got their backs and that I will work cooperatively with them to try to get things done. So pasting me with Ron Conway, pasting me with, the mayor is a great campaign tactic, probably. But it's not who I am, it's not the reason I took this job, and it's not the way I've lived the last 9 months. And so, somebody brought up an expression the other day I hadn't heard in a while about somebody treating every problem like a nail and they were always the hammer. That's not my approach. I think as a district, we need to be fairly innovative in how we solve our problems. We need to bring in as many ideas and as much a backup and help as we can possibly get in order to get through the times that we've got. And I've got a long history of working cooperatively with people, of solving problems, and of having large-scale projects actually come to fruition. And I've been building strength in my ability to expand that, to cover the whole district and to cover all the projects. I've heard a lot from people about not having been heard and not having been responded to over past years. But we're dealing with streetlights and potholes and people going through garbage cans at night at the same time that I'm looking for ways to get our private sector involved in helping solve our problem, in dealing with some of the entrenched issues that are currently bedeviling our district. I'm going to do it with a smile on my face and a sense of cooperation that I hope will represent this district as the kind of people we want to be and the kind of neighborhoods that we are. And I'd love your support in November.
Thank you. What?
May I make a rebuttal for you?
No.
So that was just a rumor. So
I
sorry.
just want to say that the Middle Polk Neighborhood Association has
Okay.
Not a candidate.
Let's keep it.
anybody.
Sorry, Don, we'll keep it.
Who said you could make a choice?
You can tell, we are going to have a little informal thing after the formal debate. So, Mr. Peskin, this is a time for closing remarks, but some issues were raised. The supervisor says you have flip-flopped. She raises the issues of the library, the Pagoda Theater, Middle Polk when it comes to the Bicycle Coalition. Would you care to address some of those in your closing remarks?
So Joe and members of the audience, I'm rather astounded and taken back that as we have run out of our campaign a positive campaign, that with all due respect to the supervisor, 72 hours after sending out a scurrilous piece of hit mail directly from her campaign, that she would be saying these things this evening. The reality is, if you read Materin Ross, Supervisor Michaela Alioto-Pierre has endorsed this candidacy. Supervisor Michaela Alioto-Pierre said for the record that what she saw in that attack mailer was offensive. I was offended by it, and I hope all of you are too. I can go through each and every one of those statements, but rather than saying that, particularly given the previous thing, let me just say what I've said repeatedly about this campaign. This is not about putting me back into City Hall. This is about putting these neighborhoods and all of you back into City Hall. And there are those who say that we can't go backwards. Let me assure you, I'm running for supervisor because I want to move this district and this city forwards. I would like to reinstitute the Green Patrol and clean up our streets and our sidewalks, not just when there's a Super Bowl, not just when there's election, but every day. I would like to expand and renew our efforts on homelessness. As you heard, when I was supervisor, we had 1,000 less homeless people in San Francisco. And by the way, if, as Supervisor Christensen says, this is a result of development that is forcing homeless people to move, I think we should consider that when we approve those developments and who pays for that. And I think that we need to pass comprehensive legislation to protect tenants. And some of that is to make sure that these nuisance evictions that have gone through the roof are dealt with. And there's a piece of legislation that is actually before the board that was introduced by Supervisor Jane Kim, who endorses this candidacy. I'm extremely grateful in this campaign to have the support of many, many organizations and individuals who contribute so much to this city. Education advocates like our school teachers and our community college teachers and our nurses and our healthcare workers. Parks and open space advocates like the Sierra Club and San Francisco Tomorrow, and I'm delighted to see that Jane Morrison is here this evening. District 3 neighborhood leaders like Bill Hannon from the Golden Gateway Tenants Association and Kathleen Courtney from the Russian Hill Community Association and Robin Tucker from the Pacific Avenue Neighbors Association and many others. And respected elected leaders like State Senator Mark Leno, Board of Equalization member Fiona Ma, Assembly member Phil Ting, our former city attorney who I had the pleasure of working with, Louise Rennie, and our former mayor, Art Agnos, and affordable housing advocates like the San Francisco Tenants Union and the Affordable Housing Alliance. And artists like Rebecca Solnit and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Jack Hirschman, who see so many of their fellow artists struggling to stay in San Francisco. But really the most important support I could get is yours. And if you haven't heard enough tonight, if you have more questions, please come down to our campaign headquarters down the street at 1238 Sutter Street between Polk and Van Ness, and tell us what you want, what's on your mind. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, and go to our website at www.aaron2015.com, or you can email me at aaron@aaron2015.com. Thank you and good night. Have a very good fall.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes District 3 debate. We thank you for your attendance. Just a round of applause. The candidates, you participating in this democracy. Candidates that are going to stick around for a little bit. There will be an informal presentation. On behalf of KPIX 5 TV, thank you for watching and good night. Thank you.